Hello and welcome, I'm Tafarag Adamu. Last week, a group of young Africans launched what they dubbed as an online monument for victims of violence in the African continent. As a grassroots movement, what is it actually set to achieve? My guest today, Mikias, Sissay, works for Africa Practice, which is a prime supporter of this movement. Everyone, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
We are all going through violence of immense proportions, as you know. Who suffers is pretty much clear, pretty much obvious, women and children. And of course, the young are one way or the other entangled in this web of conflicts and violence in the African continent. And it's about time that you and your colleagues, people you're working with, have started this project of at least talking out loud about conflicts in Africa and so on. And that brings us to this interesting intervention that you're having now, this virtual memorial or monument. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Just to give it a perspective onto that, the Africa Practice, my organization, is giving a platform for the youth. This is youth-led, youth initiative that they do it on their own, but we give them the platform, we give them the encouragement, we give them whatever little resources we have, and we help them mobilize themselves. So this is an online platform they come up with, which we are supporting them, and it's supposed to help remember those who have lost for armed conflict, those who have lost their lives for armed conflicts. That's to say, many of people have lost their brothers, sisters, father, mother, sister, whoever, near and far. So this is an online platform, or I would call it an online monument that would remind these people that they have lost. People would come, if you have, I'm sure you have gone to the platform and have seen it, that people say, I've lost my brother for this and that. I've lost my sister for this and that. These people are not numbers. Oftentimes, when we listen to news, we hear that X amount of people have died or X amount of people are casualties. But they are not a number. They are human beings. They have parents. They have family. So it's not the number. It is the people. If we understand it that way, probably it might help us, to resort into non-violent conflict resolution mechanisms.
Well, it is a grassroots kind of movement, right?
Yes.
Your role here as an organization is merely to kind of support this movement take off, right?
Exactly.
And when did the idea surface in the first place? Gone through all these physical monuments all over the African continent, one way and the other, but the idea for an online monument is a little bit too different, right?
Yeah, well, of course, you have to look at your audience. The audience nowadays, the young, the youth particularly, resort to rather the online platform, how you call it, the social media. So to reach them, that's the best solution. On the other hand, at the background or at its backdrop, you have silencing the guns by 2020 in Africa, the theme of the year of the African Union for this year. So if the guns are supposed to be silenced, how do you silence it? Why do you silence it? Why you silence it is to resort into non-armed conflicts, into discussing your conflict and coming up about solutions that works for both. So at the backdrop of that, to engage the youth have come up with their own mechanisms, their tools that they can reach, connect, and one another. That's why you've seen thousands of impressions, hits, comments, and discussions
in less than 24 hours.
Exactly.
You launched it on the 29th of January. That's last Wednesday, right?
Yes. I only have the 12 hours data, but it's closed on the 30th.
And
millions have gone into that and, at least interacted once and so on and so forth. So we found it an interesting tool to extend this to further. This is just the start.
It's a social media. It's a young. So it's they're pretty much connected.
Exactly.
And what are the impressions? I mean, there are also survivors, right?
Some are survivors, some family members, some who are talking about their friends and whatever. So it doesn't exclude anyone. Anyone who wants to go there, it's basically for Africans. However, an African who's in Australia today or in Japan or wherever it is can also communicate. This is the online platform. The good thing about it is it has made the world, one village, as a result of which everybody communicates. That's how it has got so much traction and at the same time generated good results.
Okay, the people who are part of this conversation, mostly the young.
Yes, they are the youth.
Have lost their loved ones through what conflicts and there are various forms of violence, including domestic ones, right? There is no limit to the kind of.
There is no limit, so long as it is all about remembering or commemorating through names not numbers campaign that whoever they have lost, some shared pictures, some shared stories, some shared names alone, and whatever.
In the run-up to the launch of this online platform, you must have gone through quite a bumpy road, right? I mean, putting together all the necessary ingredients to get this off the ground, right?
Well, yes,
it didn't come on moment's notice anyway.
No, it's been planned since September. It's an ongoing process because helping the youth mobilize themselves, creating that network. It's not only in South Africa or Egypt alone or Nigeria or Djibouti, Ethiopia or wherever. It is all over Africa. So creating that network, helping the youth network with one another, creating that platform, help them launch. And all the announcement, for example, the past 1-2 weeks, we're too busy, sending out the announcements, developing the flyers, sending out, and distributing to as many people as possible and all.
So why did you choose the last week of January to launch this?
The specific reason with that is it associated with the African Union Heads of State Assembly, which is a summit in few days in February. So doing it now, it is one of the things that you could attract so many attentions through, and also the outcomes can easily be shared through the youth into that platform.
So this silencing the guns kind of initiative for the year 2020. But this is not sanctioned. This is not like given the go-ahead by the African Union, right? It came from a different source, from a different corner, a different angle.
It doesn't need anyone's blessings. But it is a thinking.
It is a thinking.
For one to think, no one needs one's blessings. Therefore, a group of people can think together and can take their own initiative to doing something good, like this one.
Yeah. So it just went for viral, of sorts, for 24 hours.
Yes.
After that, it took...
Yes, now it will continue, The platform is there, the discussion can continue, and the products, what you find out there, the testimonials and everything would be documented, published, and shared, so that it can inform where appropriate.
Let's retract a little bit. How far and wide has it gone across the African platform? I mean, I'm talking about the internet penetration in the African continent. About 13.5% of the African population has internet access, which is very, very, very low. So considering the fact that yours is an online conversation, you think these young people would be able to reach out to as many Africans as necessary because the connectivity is not there?
I think this is a start. Yeah. This is a start. And, probably the online platform is the low-hanging fruit. Hence, that's where you start and to develop on it. Because, yes, definitely it is for people, for younger ones in city areas where there is internet penetration that they could get this information from. And don't forget that we are Africans as well. We have the unconventional media, which is words of mouth. Hence, people, those who participated in this, they have their own roots in their village. The word would be spread. But again, I'm definitely confident that this is not going to end here. it's going to continue in other platforms as well.
From what you have observed in the 24 hours, the first 24 hours, do you think that Africa is fairly represented here, or is it only from one corner of the continent that people work?
I think it's fairly represented. I don't have the data now on my hand, but I was keenly following it as well. So from all countries and name of cities that I don't even know in Africa were contributing number of things. Saying that I am XY from this city, this age, I lost this kind of person and whatever. So I would say with the limited internet penetration, we have made a big impression or impact.
How about from Ethiopia? I didn't have the chance to have a look at it in some detail, but is there Ethiopian participants too? Doing this conversation on that platform?
I don't remember specific names, but I would say yes, there were some from Ethiopians, but I can't recall who was there from which area, but Ethiopia was there too.
So you say the aim is to remember, right?
Yes.
What about making perpetrators of crimes of this violence, of these kinds of violence, holding them to account? Is that a way to get to that?
This is not the purpose of this campaign. The purpose of this campaign is to saying armed conflict resolution is not a good thing. Hence, it made us lose a lot of people, as a result of which I've lost my brother, my father, my sister, my daughter, whatever of the case that person comes up with. So it serves as a wake-up call to give a personal message for people, names not numbers means it is a number. It's not a number. It's a name. It's like Mikias. It's like Tafarra. It's a name. So when you find that name, as we have earlier before we come into this studio, they find it difficult to comprehend why such kind of bad things happening. Because if you know the guy, will it be easy for you to kill the person? When you know the name, instead of listening that 10 people are the casualties, if you are listing the names of the previous people, X, Y, Z, A, B, C, whatever kind of names they have, at the end of the day, it affects. So it is to create that kind of emotion, that kind of feeling, so that people would stop, would pause, and think about it.
Conflicts and violence in Africa claim at least one life every 3 minutes. Quite a problematic area that we need to grapple with in the years ahead.
Definitely, all of us have responsibility onto that, because to hold our governments, all are responsible of people, opinion makers, leaders, and whoever involved in such process, to advise them to make that change. And also creating that information, that buzzword, helps for the new youngs, the upcoming young ones, so that they won't be recruited into that.
So I'm just thinking out loud here. How young are the participants on this platform so far? Do you anticipate very young people? Probably. I'm thinking of, as you very well know, for many years now in conflicts in Africa, child soldiers kind of make quite a population, considering the fact that they shouldn't have been there in the first place. So are the young, very, very young people taking active part in this conversation, or do you expect them to?
Yes, of course. There are many young people. Ultimately, the target are from age 18 to 36.
I'm thinking about it's younger than that. What would be?
But the thing is,
coached by their...
Given that, the social media, some Facebook doesn't allow under certain age.
But with parental guidance, could they be part of the? But do you encourage that? That's what I'm saying. Would you encourage that?
I can't comment on that, because it's just it's a parental case. It's about the parents.
So this intervention has designed this platform to be able to achieve something at a given period of time. You going certainly beyond 2020, right? Although this would you're going to make a massive presence in the year 2020 this year because of the theme, for the African Union team. But how far down the years do you expect this movement to go?
We'll support not only this but many other exercises. Also, capacity building for journalists. As Africa Practice, I'm talking about.
This is the African Practice
organization
supporting silencing the guns by 2020 in Africa.
Exactly. So in our support, in our contract, in supporting the silencing the guns campaign, we have list of exercises. Among which, this is one and the first one, and bringing together people in many forms, providing trainings, creating networks whereby the conversation keeps going, because that dialogue is important. Dialogue is a solution. It is a lack of communication that leads into conflict. And that same conflict can be resolved through communication. Hence, to encourage that, we want to push ahead for serious debates, discussions all over, across the board, in all walks of life.
In the African continent, you have started that, or
yes, this is
one of the projects they
exactly we are supporting,
putting in place a memorial. It is a very interesting and funky idea. Do you have similar projects coming up?
If I might not, if I just call an example here, for example, you might walk into Champs-Élysées and you look at that Eiffel Tower and whatever, and when you come back, you're not there. You still remember it. So monument is for you to get attached to that thing, a physical presence. This is also a physical, in fact, interactive communicating. Some, I'm sure, have already created through that platform some frames. Hence, this is going to be a continuous exercise. Others might be, non-traditional way of going about it, bringing about together, using the non-conventional media, creating some public dialogue platforms with helps of CSO. We have mapped out a few CSOs that we work with. We have identified those. We are working with them. We are discussing to finding what would be the best, innovative and attractive that brings together, At the end of the day, this is a communication exercise. That exercise is supposed to affect one's intellect and emotion at the same time. So we're working with our partners in the CSO and others as well to identify those, and we'll soon announce, and you'll be invited as well.
If you're going to work across Africa, I think you need the African Union as a very important actor, right? At least it gives you the political support that these kinds of interventions need to get, to their destination.
I wouldn't think otherwise, because, it's supportive to the African Union exercise, but we never sought for any guidance, approval, or blessing from the African Union. It is the youth initiative that we are supporting. Hence, of course, definitely many African Union staff members, be it in leadership or otherwise, may have also been participated. Once we drive out the data, we might know if there is mention of African Union in that.
So again, I'll reverse the question. I mean, the African Union would certainly need these kinds of interventions that you are undertaking, right? Because you've said the plan was to silence the guns at the African continent by 2020, which is this year. We are not anywhere near the silencing of guns. So do you think that interventions like yours would help meet those goals that the African Union puts on paper, but fails to achieve, perhaps?
Isn't this an exercise of giving voice to the voiceless? We're giving that platform for the voiceless to make voice. So those voices, from whichever corner they come, they have their own concerns. And I'm sure the African Union and others concerned, even governments included, are paying attention to those voices. And at the end of the day, they will take note and make some kind of effort to address those concerns. So this also In other words, like you put it, a call for an accountability, because the Agenda 2063 in its article number 4, if I'm not mistaken, has it that silencing the gun is there. So by 2020 it says, yes, there are discussions that are taking place. This is the theme of the year, and it's going to be launched in a few days now. So definitely they would appreciate it. And also it's also a feedback.
Mikias, Sissay, thank you very much indeed, and good luck on that project. It was a great pleasure having you on my show.
Thanks for having me. Thank you so much.